Okay guys, if you've been linked to this one, this is going to be my coloring tutorial because I've had a few people ask about how I colored and things of that nature. So this is mostly just so people that are wanting to see how I color or learn how I color can follow along, so I don't have to make up some tutorial thing, because personally for me, when I'm watching someone do it and actually following along, I learn a lot better than just following pictures. So bear with me for just a bit while I get everything set up here and spam the link to everybody to come watch. So what I do is, when I start with the flats, is, let's get this whip off of there. Alright, on here you can go ahead and see that I've got this folder, and next to it, it's got this little square that has kind of like a whited out shape. It's in the shape of the character right here. How I do that is I go ahead and, let's go ahead and hide that for right now. Or not, apparently, because I never put anything in there. Yeah. I never put anything in that. Interesting. Okay. I was just really lucky, apparently. Alright, so what I did is you've got your lines all set up and everything like that. And you want to make it where, even if you color, like if I wanted to color this area right here, we want to make it where if I color like this, okay, I need to actually have my brush set properly. I was coloring blood, pardon that, but okay. Where when I color like this, where instead of it bleeding out of the character, it just stays inside my lines. Well, how I go about doing that is, as of late I've been actually putting my line art in different layers. So I have like a line art layer for the hair and things like that. So if I wanted to go back and color it, it's easier to do it that way. But what I do is I duplicate all of the line art layers and make it all into one. So you've got your single line art layer. And you go ahead and select that layer, and we're going to use the magic wand right up here. And we're going to actually select the outside of the character. Okay, and if there's any like extra spaces, like right in here, where her arm is cutting off the selection, we're going to go ahead and hold down Shift and use the magic wand again and select that. And then I personally set up a shortcut key to do this in my Photoshop, but normally you don't have a shortcut key. I set mine up as Control 0. It was something else that I never used, so I just changed it to that. But what we're going to go and do is, I believe it's Select, Modify, and Expand. See, I have the Control 0 right there. This is the one I used for everything. So we're going to go ahead and expand. And it'll have this. And we're going to want to generally expand it by like 1 pixel. This enables it where you don't get all that like extra little pixeling on the edge when you color stuff. So let's expand it by 1. You can change it to 100, 10, 15, whatever you like. Generally just do like 1 or 2 depending on how thick your lines are. So I'm going to do it by 1. And see here, it expands it. And then, while we're still on the magic wand, we're going to right click and select the inverse. So currently we've got everything outside the line art selected. We're wanting to select everything that's inside the line art. Okay, and then now that we have that, let's make a new layer underneath the line art. And then grab your bucket tool and fill it in. So you should have just that area. Since I have such a dark color, let's undo that and do it with a brighter color here. So let's do a pink, just so it's easier to see. Alright, and then you can go ahead and hit Control D to deselect it. Alright, so we've got that. So we should be done, right? Not exactly. As we all know with the wand tool, it doesn't quite get everything. So we end up with these little pixely areas right here. So all you really have to do is just go through with your eraser and erase those out so you don't have any extra pixels on the edges. Alright, so I went ahead and did that already, so I'm just going to delete that and show you my original one. So my original one is back in here. I used a bright red for it. Because generally when I do these, I want to choose a color that isn't showing up in the art itself. So as you can see with the character, they don't have any red on them. So if I do a bright red when I'm coloring, it'll show through all the other colors. Make it easier to see. Okay, but yeah. So you have this area selected, and what this little box here is, it's pretty much a layer mask, where if you're, okay, you want to have the layer that you did all the coloring and you went through and clean up the edges and all that. So again, we don't have that little extra bits here and there. And what we do is just make sure you have that layer selected, and right on here where it actually shows the picture, hold down Control and click on it. And it'll actually give you that marching ants right on that, so it has that whole selection. And then you can do it as layers, or you can do it as a folder. I prefer folders so I don't have to do the mask on every single layer and everything. Just saves time. So just make a new folder. And this button right here, next to the FX, if you go ahead and hit that, it'll pop up that little mask. So any layer, you can put as many layers as you want underneath here. And anytime you try and color in it on that new layer, it won't show up outside it. You can only color in that selected area you have there. It's a nifty little trick, especially when you have like hair pieces like this. Easy coloring! So, yeah. Yeah, that's how I set it up for when I do my base coloring. So, we have our base colors done and whatnot. I did my blood splotchy thing that I don't exceptionally like. It looks too gray. I need to make it more red. So, okay, now we have to actually get to the shading part of this. My work has really influenced how I describe things now from doing tech support, because I have to pretty much envision what's on the other person's computer and describe it and all that stuff now. But yeah, so that's the basic setup for when you do base coloring. And the same thing is pretty much what I do with my shading. But when you're doing your base colors, this helps me later on, is make sure to do each thing on a separate layer. So my hair is on a whole separate layer. And when you're doing it, make sure, even though we do have the little masking thing on there, try not to, for example, when I'm coloring the shirt, yeah. So when you're, say the hair layer is on top of the shirt layer. So the shirt layer is underneath it. So if I would have colored on the shirt layer going up into the hair, you wouldn't be able to see it. But when it comes to shading, you want to make sure you only have the area that needs to be colored. Don't go out of the lines and whatnot and all that fun stuff, because it'll throw you under the bus. That's the word for that. Throw you under the bus later. Because what we're gonna do is, which do I want to start with? I guess I could start with hair. Yeah, I generally start with hair because it's the most obnoxious to do, most detail oriented. And again, we're gonna do that. Control click to select that. Sometimes it pops up like that. You can just ignore that. Alright, so we have that selected. Okay, unselected because I totally forgot a step. So deselect that because I totally messed up for a second. Okay, so we've got our base color folder. We're going to want to make another folder on top of that and do the same thing. Select that one big base color thing that selects the entire line art. And do it again, make that folder where you've got the mask. And in that one, we're going to make folders within folders because everyone loves folders and being organized. So, since I tend to put a lot of layers on my stuff with shading and effects and everything, I like to make a folder for each shading part. So this is going to be a folder strictly for all the shading and highlighting I'm going to do on the hair. And that's not the button I needed to click. That is the one you need to click. So, any coloring or shading anything that I'm going to do in this folder will only show up in the hair, so I can't color on the skin or anything like that. It's a really nifty trick. So, masking is amazing. Okay, And okay, so since we're back on the subject of coloring, when I start, I go ahead and choose which colors I want to use for shadow and for highlighting. You can choose whichever ones you want to do depending on the piece. I'm gonna go with normally I'll go with black, but you can do any color really. I'm gonna try dark purple on this one, because that seems to be a fad that's going around, doing purple and yellow. And when you're selecting colors, make sure you don't actually have this mask layer selected, because you'll only be able to select white or black. So actually make sure you are on just a regular layer, and then you can actually select colors. And what the white and black on the mask is anything that's white can be seen, and anything that's black can't be seen. It's the same way actually in the film industry as well, when we do masks and that. So, but some people it's like flipped in different programs, so same concept and everything. But yeah. So go ahead and choose your color that you want to use for shadows. And then choose your color you want to use for highlights. Go with a green yellow. Okay, and what I do is so it doesn't like mess with anything and I don't lose it at a later time, or when you're shading and you do effects and then you're like, wait, what color was I using? Because you had to change it to maybe fix a pixel that you found. I go ahead and just make a swatch like I have up here for the actual colors. I need to actually go back to my normal coloring brush, not the one I use for blood. Yeah, just do dot here for the color I'm using for shading, and then a dot here for the color I'm using for highlights. I actually prefer shading and highlighting with colors. That way if I want to change it to like white or black, it's easier than if I was using black and wanting to change it to a color. Tips for the trade. But shading! Okay. Tip with shading as well. Most people generally know. Choose where your light source is going to be. Whether you want the light to start over here, so most of the face will be in shadow. I generally like the face to be the most lit part. So I generally will, depending on where the character's facing, choose that. I generally choose like a spot up here as for where I want the light to come from. And from that, you decide. It decides how you're going to shade. So. Then you shade. We shade. And I still do not have the functional playlist on my iPod. God dang it! No, I need to make sure my eraser's on the right one. Oh. Do I? Yep. Dang it. Yep, and these little, I'm not sure if you can see them very well, but pink dot things there are what I was referring to, where you find out that you totally missed pixels in your coloring and didn't notice them until you start coloring or shading. So, happens to me all the time. This is why I put the splotches up there. So we've got hair. Now let's try that again, starting with the hair. So we've got the folder, put the mask on it, and drop our layer in there. And since we already had these saved earlier, we can just select them there and start our shading process. I generally choose to just full out shade the parts that are going to be in shadow first. Pardon. Okay. So first, when I do the shading, I generally cell shade it. So I do one layer of just regular, basic cell shading. So no fading, anything like that. No fancy stuff. And then go ahead and I duplicate it. And then we hide that bottom layer. So we've only got one of them showing. This is the part where I go and take the blur tool. I'm still working on how to do it properly where it's the soft shading, but this is at least how I do it or attempt to do it. Generally you want to blur the tips more. You don't quite want that little exposed edge there. So anywhere where there's a tip, pretty much, you're gonna want to blur that. At least that's how I do it. Pretty much, you want to blur it where if it's a curve, you want to show that it is a curve. As I said, I'm still learning and figuring everything out. So, yeah. After we've blurred the edges and stuff on the first layer that we want, actually, totally forgot. It works really well for parts like that. And here. Soften the edge. Okay. So yeah, and then we bring the main one that's still cell shaded that we made a duplicate of back up. And then we're gonna bring the opacity down to about 20%. And then for the shading, the soft part, do it about 70. It all depends on the color you're using for shading. So this gives it that still glowy effect of the soft shading. You can choose to do it without the underlayer if you like, but it's just my personal preference. And also, I love the overlay feature. and maybe mixing. So I'll overlay the bottom one, but multiply the top. Okay, so we've got the main shading. We're done, right? Not exactly. Well, depending on your shading style. My shading style, well, my detailed shading style, no. For simple shading style, I wouldn't even be doing the soft shading. But what we're going to do next totally looks like a giant blob of mess. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, I have two ways of doing it. One where I just blob the color on and blur it, and then I've got the version where I use the airbrush. Lovely little tool. What we're going to do is, if you look at a person in general, or even other anime art, it's always actually darker up at the roots. And you have the highlight here, bangs, and around that part of the head. So what we'll do is we've got our shadow color, and we're going to just quickly brush on some shading where it would be the darkest. You don't need to go like overboard or anything like that, but you want to make sure to do it darker where it would be the darkest. And then we're going to make another layer and use the highlighting color that we have selected. And just toss a highlight on there. Just do it until you're content with it. Okay. Generally, you want to toss these under the shading layers, or you can do them on top. Doesn't particularly know, I think. Let's see here. Let's try over. Okay. Don't quite like that green color, so I'm actually going to change it. And so I don't have to redo it, I actually go to color balance and change it to whatever shade you want. Now it's a yellow. Let's try. There we go. Gives it a nice, glowy, pretty pink overlay. Since it is a bit bright, let's go ahead and just lower the opacity just a smidge to about 75. Okay. Now comes a new trick that I started doing, so that looks pretty decent, but we still have a few more steps to do, on the hair at least. We're gonna go ahead and select Goodness, I forgot a section of the hair to shade. Oops. I'll have to go back and do that. And note that my shading does inadvertently change the colors. Not that it's purposely intentional, it's just how my shading ends up. But we're going to do that. Now for the topmost part. Add some highlight detailing. Give it that nice shiny feel. So yeah, on the hair, the layers that I end up with are the main shading layer. So let's go ahead and okay, you've got your main shading layer that I put lower. So this is the one that doesn't have blurred edges. Then you have the one that I did the blur the edges on to do the soft shading on. Then I went ahead to do the shadow, basic shadow for the then to the highlight, to the secondary shadow, helps differentiate where that little highlight line that we see on all the anime characters pops up. And I did another highlight one to make that pop a bit more. And then the general little extra highlights that make it a bit shinier. And you have your hair. I think I'm going to call it quits for right now and continue this in the next stream. So for those of you that are watching and learning anything from this, I hope you're getting something from it, at least. So yeah, sorry about the random little bits in between and me having to go back and fix up those pixels. But I guess it's a message out to you guys to make sure to double check all your pixels before you go to start shading, so you don't have to redo them like I did. Yeah. Whew. See you guys in part 2, where hopefully I'll get more done than just the hair. But then again, the hair is generally what takes me the longest. So, see you guys soon!